This is the Ivy League on ESPN. From the Charles River, we've got a great matchup between two of the best lightweight rowing programs in the country as the Harvard Crimson hosts the Dartmouth Big Green. And on the other side for Harvard, as we mentioned, they've got two groups racing in this first event. Here's the Varsity A team. Cox and Haley Hicks, first year, will be leading the group. In the stroke seat, Matt Lyons, the senior from Orinda, California. Howard Huang, the senior from Woburn, Mass. The local will be in that third seat. Jack Jawork, the first year from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And then at the bow, Russell O'Donnell, the junior from Melrose, Mass.
Correct.
As we now take a look at the Varsity B squad. For the men's lightweight, Erica Lai, the junior from Manhasset, New York, will be the coxswain. Kevin Wu, the first year from Toronto, Ontario, in the stroke seat. Cedar Larson, the sophomore from Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the third. Cecile Chen, in the two. And then Ryan Brewington, the sophomore out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at the bow.
Yeah, as you can see that the Varsity 4B is not having an official alignment. They're racing this essentially as an exhibition. They won't make official weight, so their result is just simply to get out there. The reason that they are doing this race is because Dartmouth does not have a third Varsity 8 to compete, and so Harvard actually broke up its third Varsity 8 into two Varsity 4s, and they are competing, and off and away they go.
We are underway here for the first event of three today. He's Alex Vespoli. I'm Andrew Gardner. Harvard in the middle in Dartmouth in the middle in lane number 4. Harvard's A team will be in lane 3 and the Varsity B team in lane 5.
And you saw it getting off to a really quick start, as you would expect. That stroke rate was up around 42 strokes per minute, and Harvard had a great start, but boy, they're running into all sorts of trouble there on that Varsity 4A, and they have fallen well back of even their B squad. I don't know what happened there. It's almost like everybody stopped rowing and then picked it back up, and in the meantime, Dartmouth have been able to move in front, and so you've got that exhibition squad that's currently a couple of seats down of Dartmouth, but the Harvard Varsity 4A is trying to claw their way back. They trail by about a boat length here. The dramatic first 40 seconds or so of this race, Andrew.
Yeah, Dartmouth getting off to a great start. They've got about a 2-seat lead on the Varsity B squad for Harvard. This Dartmouth team, last time out at the National Collegiate Lightweight Invitational 2 weeks ago against Columbia and Penn, finished their first race at 8 minutes and 2 seconds. That finish was a first place finish, and then the afternoon slate, they improved by nearly 30 seconds, Alex, finishing at 7 minutes and 36 seconds.
Yeah, it certainly was a big improvement, and I think that Dartmouth, they didn't put all their eggs in one basket as far as that competition, and they're not trying to be at their best for the first competition of the season, even though it's a big event with a lot of different programs there. As a result, they dropped in the rankings from, they were a top 4 program. They moved to number 7 as far as the first Varsity 8, but this is a Dartmouth team that is really building, and they have a very difficult training that they have in the preseason to get themselves ready for the season. And again, it's not necessarily about how they perform in that first race. They're not going to be a squad that is trying to go through the entire season without taking a loss, but finding the right combination for their boats. What's notable about this Varsity 4 for Dartmouth is that it is a group made entirely of first years. You've got a first-year cox. You mentioned Abigail Galton, who's from Weston, Massachusetts, learned how to cox at Dartmouth this past fall, and then the 4 rowers, all first years. So this is really encouraging for Dartmouth. Harvard was able to stop the bleeding. They've been able to eat back into that advantage that Varsity 4A group is. You're starting to see the Varsity 4B fall behind by about 3 seats, but still really give credit to what the Big Green are doing here. They haven't ceded a ton of ground. There's still time left in this race. You have to think that maybe the Harvard rowers caught a crab or something and it threw off the rowing cadence. And it shows you make a small mistake or a brief second or two and how much momentum that can cost you and forces you to chase the entire way. Unlike some other sports, there is no advantage to being behind the other squad in a rowing race because you can't draft off of them. You can't gauge yourself. You can't even see your opponent when you trail by more than a boat length. But here you're starting to see Harvard make a big run here as they're past that halfway point in the race and they only trail by a couple of seats.
And the varsity A team for Harvard has taken over the B team. And as Alex had said, just a few seats behind now as we're past the halfway mark in this first race of the morning. And Alex, you've talked a little bit about this Dartmouth team, and talking with both coaches this week when we spoke with Trevor Michelson, the head coach for Dartmouth, that was one of the things that stood out to me, was that they're really building long-term. Their eyes aren't really, I wouldn't say too focused on the beginning of the season because they want to get those positive results, but they're just looking to build that volume as the season continues and maybe looking a little bit more ahead to May and early June.
Yeah, he said that, you can either prepare for that first race of the season or you can prepare for the entire season, including and most especially the last few races, whether that's Eastern Sprints and the IRAs. And they take that longer term approach and they're all about finding that right combination and getting better as the season goes on. And let's see if that early lead for Dartmouth in this race is going to be enough to hold on. We probably are about a minute and a half away from the end of this one, and Harvard is still making it a conversation piece as to whether or not they'll be able to overtake them. And they look like they're picking up a little bit of ground on the river, and you can see the looks over. Is somebody going to be able to make that final push? They're looking over their right shoulders, and boy, it looks like Harvard's about to draw even and maybe take the lead.
Harvard has overtaken Dartmouth. This was a group that right off the start of this race had fallen behind quickly, but what a job by the Harvard Varsity 4A squad to pull ahead. Probably about a minute or so out here before this initial race is wrapped up. This one is still neck and neck though.
Dartmouth running out of river though, as they now trail by about a seat, and Harvard has really settled into a nice 36-37 stroke per minute cadence. It's really important not to panic when you have a setback early in a race like this, and you test yourself against a quality Dartmouth crew. The Big Green are racing in this 4 boat. Harvard hasn't raced too many of these 4s. They have a third varsity 8 typically, but boy, they are really pouring it on at the end here, and look like it's just going to be a question as to what the margin is going to be.
Hitting their stride at the right time. Harvard is approaching a boat-length lead on the Big Green. That's the Harvard Varsity 4A squad here in this first race today.
We should see the finishing line buoys coming into view here very shortly. And they're racing into a headwind, so it's taking them a little bit longer. And, of course, it's a 4-rower race here. And the times that we will see later on, but this is an impressive comeback win by the Crimson if they can hold on over these last few strokes.
You can hear the cheers along the banks of the Charles as Harvard comes across the finish line right around 7 minutes and 23 seconds. We'll get an official time in just a moment. Here's the group for Harvard. Sylvie Spitz, the junior from Newton, Mass., who was previously on the lightweight women's team, will be the coxswain. Nikhil Ramaraju, from the junior from Iowa, will be in the stroke seat. Maxton Kilroy, the first year out of Mendham, New Jersey, in the 7-seat. Brody Luce, the first year from Albany, New York, in the 5. Herbie Austin Baker, the first year from Oxford, England, in the 5-seat. Ian O'Reilly, in the 4-seat from Scottsdale, Arizona. He's a sophomore. And then the first year from Elm Grove, Wisconsin, Grant Atkinson. Lucas Pinsent, the sophomore from London, England, in the 2-seat. And finally at the bow, Henry Jones, the junior from Worcester, England. And here is the group for Dartmouth, as the coxswain Douglas Max Spear, the sophomore from Greenville, South Carolina, will lead the charge. In the stroke seat, Henry Bedell, the junior from Arlington, Virginia. Inigo Sherrock out of Hereford, United Kingdom. He's a sophomore. Colby Sauter, the sophomore from Charlestown, Mass. Sam Welsh, the senior from Montclair, New Jersey, in the 5 seat. Bryce Ostermiller in the 4. He's a first year from Salt Lake City, Utah. And then in the 3 seat, Spencer Selhanik, the first year from Andover, Mass. Grayson Lee, the junior from Los Angeles, California, in the 2 seat. And then finally at the bow, Gray Graham, the sophomore from Malvern, Pennsylvania.
So you see Dartmouth is in the foreground. Harvard will be up at the top of your picture, of course, with the crimson oars. Shouldn't be too difficult to tell these crews apart despite having yellow shells that they'll be racing in. But it's a Harvard second varsity 8 that has a lot of changes. They've got 5 new athletes. You know, last year's JV, very senior heavy. This year, it's pretty young. They have 1 junior and no seniors in this group. So it's a different feel to the boat. But, you know, talking with Billy Boyce, they feel like the raw output is potentially either as fast or faster than the national champion second varsity 8 from last year. It just doesn't have that same level of season and maturity with 5 seniors who were in the boat last year. On the Dartmouth side, this is a crew that last week in their 2 races, they finished 2nd to 10. They beat MIT, and they also had a race in which they lost to Princeton by about 8 seconds. But again, you know, when we spoke with Billy Boyce about the Dartmouth crew and, you know, about facing them, he said, I wouldn't put much stock in those results from 2 weeks ago. It's early in the season, and a lot can change in 2 weeks at this point in the year, especially for a crew like Dartmouth that didn't get a lot of time out on actual water before their first competition of the season.
Well, and I think Trevor Mickelson on the other side for Dartmouth had kind of said something similar about, you know, maybe being a bit more motivated going up against what he called the best crew in the country as we get started in the second varsity 8. Harvard at the top of your screen, Dartmouth at the bottom with those green oars.
Dartmouth starting off at about a 41-42 stroke per minute, and after the early stalemate, it looks like Harvard has the ever so slight edge. It's a little bit difficult because our camera was trailing the action, but now you're starting to see Harvard really definitively put itself in front here in the early strokes of this race. You'll see these squads settle into a mid-30 stroke rate after that opening burst, and then the matter of can they hold the speed for the length of the river. Of course, we will find out. This is a Dartmouth crew, and the program has had such a great rise over the last few years. Much like Harvard's program has had a rise. Now, Harvard has done it with the same coach who's been there for more than a decade in Billy Boyce, but Trevor Michelson has been able to build this up now in his 4th season, and really feels like the Big Green program is kind of back in the conversation after a really strong performance at IRAs last year.
Yeah, he has done an excellent job of boosting this program, and the main thing that he attributed it to was just the volume of reps and putting together a really tough training camp and kind of start to the season to get this group ready to face some of these tougher groups like the Harvard Crimson.
Yeah, and that can really do a lot for you. Right now, though, Dartmouth is going to need to find something because it's an open water margin right now. These crews are racing into a pretty consistent headwind. It's been around 15 to 18 miles an hour for much of the morning, getting up to about 24 miles an hour, and mostly a headwind that they are rowing into. And racing in tough conditions, it helps build up the crew, but right now Harvard is handling it a little bit more. That's something that Trevor Michelson didn't feel like his crews did a great job of handling conditions a couple of weeks ago. Now, he did really highlight this 2V. He's really proud the way they raced 2 weeks ago. Felt like they raced with without abandon or a ton of aggression. They feel like the boat has improved. They made some changes between the first varsity and the second varsity. They've got about 12 guys that are capable of racing in that first varsity 8. So a little bit of mixing and matching is something that, of course, happens throughout the season. Right now, Harvard's looking like it's got the formula as they hit the halfway point in this race.
The Crimson starting to open up a larger open water lead after both squads were neck and neck for about the first 90 seconds of this race, but the Crimson pulling ahead. And Alex, this is a junior varsity team that has not lost a race in now over a year. The Billy Boys saying both with this group and the varsity group, who haven't lost a race in almost 2 years, as we pass under the bridge, past the halfway mark, that maybe there is a little bit of pressure on these guys week in and week out, knowing that streak is alive.
Yeah, and he told us they feel that pressure, and they talk about it and they use all the cliches. The pressure is a privilege, but I think that they have a lot of faith in the way that they go about their preparation, and that helps give them confidence as to what they can expect going into a race. If they perform the way that they are all capable of, this is what should happen in a race. And so far, so good. It's been that way the last couple of years. The JV doesn't have the same winning streak as the first varsity 8. It's still a pretty darn good one. They were undefeated all of last year, and here they are this year, looking like they're on their way to a 2-0 start. But I think from last week to this week, this second varsity 8 had a lot to prove, because they had a big lead against Penn last week, but then something happened and they lost a ton of momentum in the middle of their race and allowed Penn to come all the way back to only have it be about a 0.2 of a second win for this second varsity 8. So they were really looking to open things up and keep it going for the entirety of the race. And so they've been able to match that first part, get a big lead, and now they hope to do that second part and maintain that lead. Here's, we can't even see the Dartmouth crew in the picture right now, with this group of 5 Americans and 3 Englishmen rowing the second varsity 8 for Harvard to an enormous advantage.
It is all Crimson as we near closer to the finish line. This Crimson group looking to continue this winning streak, over a year old now. And this second varsity group that is comprised of no seniors, a handful, 3 juniors, 3 first years, and 2 sophomores. No seniors in this group, but the seniors were a group that Billy Boyce highlighted when we talked to him as a class that has really kind of changed the culture. When they came in as freshmen, he said that they have made an immediate impact, and you can see how it's maybe started to rub off on some of these younger guys as well.
Yeah, and when you have a group that has as many seniors in that first varsity 8 as Harvard does, now it's not completely loaded with seniors, it allows everybody to kind of build up their ability and build up the lower boat's depths too. And you don't have to put somebody in a boat maybe they're not ready for, and that just makes your entire squad stronger. And you're seeing that depth pay off with a performance like this in the second varsity 8. Open water and then some. This is proof that Dartmouth is still in the race, even though we can't see it from the overhead angle. And now the question is, as Harvard crosses the line, looked like it was around 6:25 on our unofficial timer, what is the margin going to be by the time we see Dartmouth come into the picture? You see that margin is going to be well over 10 seconds.
Both teams getting aligned, and we'll now take a look at the Harvard group made up of 3 seniors. Natalie Gregg, the first-year coxswain, will be at the back of the boat. Ben Lundy, the senior from London, England, in the stroke seat. Alex Forbes, also from London, England, and also a senior right behind him. Charlie Rodden, the sophomore out of Geelong, Australia, in the 6th seat. Preston Darling, the junior out of Fenwick, Ontario, Canada, in the 5th seat. Jackson Vilich, the first year out of Piedmont, California. And then Jack Duggan, the sophomore out of London, England, followed by the sophomore from Newport Beach, California, Andrew Buda, and finally Kyle Sutherland, the senior from Mill Valley, California, at the bow.
it's an experienced group, and a Harvard squad that won by nearly 5 seconds against Penn in their first race, and then a Cornell squad that has been coming back from suspension, a little bit of an undermanned group right now up there for the Big Red. But Penn has got a formidable program this season, and even though Harvard won that race last week and retained the Franklin Cup with Cornell, that Penn squad may be the other crew to beat when it comes to first Varsity 8 action.
As we mentioned, this streak of 22 straight victories for Harvard in the varsity race on the line. And some of these guys like Preston Darling, Charlie Rodden, Andrew Buda, they have not lost a race during their time at Harvard. So pure perfection since the beginning. And here we go as these teams compete for the Biglin Bowl, the final race of the day. The Varsity 8 between Harvard and Dartmouth. And off the first 10-second burst, both squads pretty even so far. Harvard with maybe a slight advantage.
Crimson rowing at about a 43 stroke per minute rate in those opening 10 strokes. And one thing, when you have the type of success that Harvard has had the last few years, you get everybody's best shot. It doesn't matter if you're a squad that is ranked in the top 10 like Dartmouth is with this Varsity 8 or somebody else. You know that everybody wants to measure themselves against you, and you can't have an off day. And this group has not had an off day. So going back to a loss in the IRA championship back in 2023, that is the last time that this first Varsity 8 finished behind another crew in a competitive race. And here they are building up about half a boat length, just over a minute into this contest. And so for Dartmouth, they want to see big improvements from where they were a couple of weeks ago. Trevor Michelson told us that his group, the Varsity 8, was flat and tired in their races a couple of weeks ago. They finished third behind Penn and MIT in the first race at the National Collegiate Lightweight Invitational. They were 13.5 seconds back of Penn, and then they were over 7 seconds back of a Princeton squad who most people thought coming into the season Dartmouth would be in front of. As a result, Dartmouth's first Varsity 8 dropped in the polls from 4th to 7th, and they're hoping to kind of build back a little bit of that goodwill that they got at the end of last season when they finished runner-up to the Crimson at the IRAs. After struggling a little bit at Eastern Sprints, they finished with their best race of the season, claimed the silver medal, but right now they are trailing by open water 2 minutes into this race, and Harvard is looking as focused and determined as ever.
100 or nearly 130 seconds into this race. It's all Harvard right now. Dartmouth needing a boost to get back into it. Now behind at an open water margin. This Dartmouth group with some different faces in the mix. Some were brought up from the second varsity group from 2 weeks ago, but this Harvard group from last week, Alex, it's the same 9, including the coxswain, and this just feels to be a group that Billy Boyce is extremely comfortable with. And I mean, maybe not crazy to say that we really just won't see many adjustments within this group this year.
Well, if they row the way they're rowing today, it's hard to imagine that there are going to be, but I think they have a good transparent ability to be competitive. And within the program, it's about what you earn, and it's really purely about that. They're not going to make excuses to get themselves into a different boat. Watch out for the traffic on Mass Ave with a fan running across a couple of lanes of traffic, but they're getting a good view of Harvard jumping way out in front.
I was going to say, he hit a nice hurdle over that Jersey barrier on the near side, too. Got to be careful there. This is all Harvard right now, as we're about 3 minutes and 30 seconds into this race. A very interesting group that kind of makes up this boat for Dartmouth. Specifically, Cosmo Hondrogen, who Trevor Michelson described as possibly the best Dartmouth lightweight rower in the history of the program. Some very high praise. And again, part of this group that knows what they have but maybe eyeing more results as the season moves along.
Yeah, Hondrigen was the U.S. Rowing U23 Athlete of the Year last year, reigning silver medalist from the U23 World Champs as a lightweight single sculler. He's, of course, on the IRCA watch list as well, and he is certainly the primary guy. It's amazing. He's just a sophomore. He learned how to scull basically last year and went out and became a silver medalist at Worlds. And they're going to need performance from him and from the other 7 guys with oars in their hands to make a big push here. But right now the story is Harvard, and looks like that streak is going to move to 23 consecutive dual wins. You talk about the veterans of this group, the Ben Lundys, the Alex Forbes, the Kyle Sutherlands. These guys have been leading the charge, and you've got guys that are a class below them that you mentioned have never lost a competitive college race. And well, with this type of performance here today, they're closing in on another dominant win. This is only going to strengthen the image of Harvard in the minds of the rest of the country. Now, a lot can change between now and the end of the season. Crimson are certainly not overconfident, but certainly have to like the way that the training that they had in the offseason has given them the results here early on. First with Penn last week in Cornell, and now Dartmouth.
They have sent the tempo really since the beginning of this race and have just not let up. And you see the margin there for Harvard at the top of your screen. A large open water lead for the Crimson as we approach the end of this race and what's most likely going to be a 3-0 day for the Crimson against the Big Green.
Crimson at about a 36 stroke rate right now. See pretty clean strokes, not catching a lot of the waves, even though they are rowing into a headwind. Both crews are. And we'll see what the final margin is. They should be crossing the line here very shortly. They do right there, right around 6:10 or so. And Dartmouth coming in, let's see. They projected based on the math that, they might lose by about 18 seconds based on the shared results they had against Penn. It looks like that margin is going to be about 10 or 11 seconds here today. So certainly better than what the computers might have predicted based on the scant early season results. But it's still a big victory for Harvard and showing their quality as a crew in that first Varsity 8 and making it a perfect day to retain that Biglin Cup, make it 4 years in a row after Dartmouth had the surprise win in 2022. But